For more on the talks and the status of negotiations, I spoke to Andrew Deutz, the Nature Conservancy's Director of International Government Relations. And I started by asking him if it's a good or bad sign that the talks are going into overtime.
Well, I'll start off by saying that the French have done an amazing job of really keeping the process moving. This has been a remarkably drama-free process when you compare it to, say, the Copenhagen conference a few years ago. It really started on a high note with the heads of state coming in and being both aspirational and inspirational, and it stayed on a very high level, really professional set of talks. Now, it's still a really complicated agenda, so there's still probably 3 or 4 key issues still in play that hopefully get resolved in the next 10 or 12 hours.
And can you tell us what some of those sticking points are?
There's probably 3 or 4 key issues that still need to get worked out. One is around calling the ratchet mechanism. So countries have come in with their new commitments on the table, which collectively add up to the single most ambitious set of emissions reduction commitments the world has ever seen. But those still aren't enough to keep the world in a safe climate. So the new agreement is supposed to have a mechanism to ratchet up those commitments. So we're hoping that it'll settle down, that countries will have to come back every 5 years with the next round of commitments, and that those new commitments will have to be both deeper in terms of their emissions cuts and broader in terms of the number of sectors of the economy that are involved. That's close to being done, I think. Second critical issue that's really a sticking point is around transparency, meaning that the countries are expected to put on the table a report on what they're doing and what the impacts of those measures are in a way that's clear and consistent. The point is, if we have clarity about what each country is doing, then other countries will have much more confidence in what's going on, and that will lead to much higher commitments from everyone else. And the third big issue, and it's always a sticking point, is finance. Now, from what we understand right now, it's looking like there's pretty clear language in there that the $100 billion that is already on the table by 2020 will be the floor. So the question that's being discussed right now is which one of several formulations will send the signal about how much increased finance the world is going to see to help developing countries with climate change after 2020.
So, Andrew, in the final draft, do you expect to see language that holds various countries, all participants, I should say, accountable to their commitments, to their promises?
The way this is going to work, I think, is we're going to have a new international agreement. There's going to be a lot of fudging going on, that some words are going to be should and some words are going to be shall. So I think there's going to be pretty clear commitment, or the words, everyone shall submit new commitments, and everyone should aspire or attempt to implement them. We'll probably see an expectation that countries shall provide new and additional financing, but there's going to be a lot of careful maneuvering about what's actually a legally binding commitment and what's sort of an aspiration or a direction that countries should go in. So you're going to take a good lawyer to read through and see what's actually legally binding internationally, and then what's legally binding for each country domestically when they get back home.
Let me move on to China and the United States, the biggest carbon polluters in the world. How much did their landmark agreement last year galvanize the efforts in Paris?
Well, I think the agreement they reached last year was really a diplomatic game changer, to have the 2 largest economies and the 2 largest emitters coming together, announcing their international commitments that they put forward. But they also reached a series of understandings around transparency, around cooperation, and around international finance, which has really helped to create the framework for a lot of the larger agreements that are going on. We understand that President Xi and President Obama have been speaking within the last 24 hours, and that they've been signaling to their teams to cooperate and get a deal done here. Having the leaders of the 2 biggest economies actually leading on climate change has been hugely influential to help get a deal here in Paris.